You don't ask for help. Not because you don't need it, but because something inside you tightens at the idea of depending on anyone. You handle things quietly, efficiently, alone, and from the outside you look strong. People admire your independence. They say things like, "You're so self-sufficient," or "I wish I was as emotionally strong as you." They don't see what it cost you to be this way, because emotional independence for you was never a personality choice. It was a survival strategy. You learned early, maybe too early, that relying on others led to disappointment, unpredictability, or pain. That needing comfort didn't guarantee receiving it. That vulnerability didn't always result in safety. So you adapted. You stopped reaching. You stopped expecting. You stopped hoping someone would be there. And it worked. It kept you functioning. It kept you moving. It kept you from falling apart. But here's the paradox, the one you may feel but never name. The very trait that once saved you is now the thing keeping you lonely. The armor that protected you from emotional collapse has become a wall that blocks intimacy. The strength that helped you survive has quietly disconnected you from being truly known. You don't feel weak, you feel contained, self-contained, emotionally sealed, like a closed system that no longer lets anything in. And the deepest tragedy is this: you didn't choose to be this way. You learned it. Emotionally independent people are often misunderstood. They're described as secure, confident, grounded. But psychologically speaking, extreme emotional self-reliance is rarely a sign of health. More often, it's the echo of an environment where emotional needs were unmet. In attachment theory, this pattern aligns closely with avoidant attachment. Avoidant attachment develops when a child learns that expressing emotional needs results in rejection, minimization, or inconsistency. Over time, the nervous system adapts by suppressing attachment signals altogether. The message becomes internalized. If I don't need, I can't be disappointed. This isn't emotional maturity, it's emotional inhibition. Neurologically, this adaptation reshapes the brain's threat detection system. The amygdala becomes highly attuned to relational risk. Vulnerability doesn't feel neutral. It feels unsafe. This creates relational hypervigilance, a state where closeness itself is perceived as danger. Another key concept here is parentification. Many emotionally independent adults were children who had to self-regulate early, emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically. They learned to soothe themselves because no one else reliably did. They became the calm one, the capable one, the low-maintenance one. But children aren't meant to be self-sufficient. They're meant to be held. And when that holding is missing, the psyche builds an internal substitute: control. Finally, there's the role of the default mode, network, DMN, the brain system responsible for self-referential thought. In emotionally neglected environments, the DMN often becomes overactive, leading to deep internalization and self-containment. You don't externalize distress. You absorb it. Independence becomes not just a behavior, but an identity. There is a grief that comes with emotional independence, but it's a quiet one. No one sees it because you don't collapse. You don't beg. You don't fall apart in public. Your pain is tidy. But inside, there is an ache. The ache of always being the one who holds themselves. You rarely feel fully met. Not because people aren't trying, but because you never fully let them reach you. You keep your needs small. You downplay your hurt. You intellectualize emotions instead of feeling them. Carl Jung once wrote, "What is not brought to consciousness becomes fate." And your fate for a long time has been emotional solitude disguised as strength. The core fear driving this pattern isn't rejection, it's dependence. Because dependence once meant loss of control. Dependence meant vulnerability without protection. Dependence meant hoping, and hoping felt dangerous. So you sacrificed something essential: authenticity for safety. You learned how to survive without leaning, but survival is not the same as living. Even rest feels earned. Even softness feels suspicious. Even love feels conditional. You don't collapse into people, you orbit them, close enough to connect, far enough to escape. And the tragedy is that the world keeps rewarding you for this. It calls you resilient, capable, mature, but no one asks how tired you are. These patterns don't stay in childhood. They become adult coping strategies. You might recognize yourself in these. In relationships, you struggle to express needs. You prefer being the giver. Asking feels like burdening. You withdraw emotionally during conflict, even when you care deeply. Silence feels safer than engagement. You intellectualize feelings, explaining them instead of experiencing them. You pride yourself on not needing anyone, but secretly long for someone to notice without being asked. You attract emotionally unavailable partners because their distance feels familiar. You feel uncomfortable receiving care, compliments, or emotional focus. These aren't personality traits. They're adaptations, and healing doesn't begin by forcing vulnerability. It begins by witnessing the pattern without judgment. This is where many people get stuck, gaslighting themselves. Others had it worse. I'm fine. This is just who I am. But patterns persist because they once served you. The work isn't to erase independence. It's to soften its rigidity. To learn that needing doesn't make you weak. That closeness doesn't equal collapse. That being held doesn't mean losing yourself. Unlearning is not dramatic. It's subtle, repetitive, gentle. It's noticing the moment you want to pull away and staying one breath longer. Healing for emotionally independent people is not about becoming dependent. It's about becoming relationally safe with yourself first. This often begins within a child. Reparenting, learning to offer yourself what was missing: reassurance, permission, softness. It may involve shadow work, meeting the parts of you that fear closeness and understanding why. And most importantly, it involves choosing softness as a skill, not a weakness. You don't need to collapse to be close. You don't need to disappear to be loved. You don't need to earn rest. As psychologist Donald Winnicott said, it is a joy to be hidden and a disaster not to be found. Healing is allowing yourself to be found, slowly, imperfectly, safely. Not to be fixed, but to be whole. Your independence was intelligent. It kept you alive, but you are no longer that child. And the next chapter of your life isn't about surviving alone. It's about discovering that connection does not erase you. It reveals you. If this resonated, share it with someone who carries their strength quietly. And remember, healing is not about becoming someone else. It's about finally coming home to yourself.